If you're a fan of football, you should stick around for this story. It's probably the most important story that I've done, and I hope I can do it justice. I don't want to sound melodramatic, but it literally changed the face of the game. So in 1970, the University of Alabama had an all-white team. Now, let's think about that for a moment. That is not that long ago at all. I know for some, it's like calculating, it seems like a long time. It's not. And if the state officials had it in their power, it would have stayed segregated. You may be familiar with Bear Bryant, the coach extraordinaire at Alabama. He was friends with the coach at USC, John McKay. One night they had a conversation, and Bryant asked John if he would bring the USC team to the Deep South in Alabama. So why is that significant? Ooh, it is. In order to really understand the significance, we do have to do a little bit of historical context, but I promise it won't be boring and it won't be long. The 1960s in the Deep South was not a good time. And Birmingham, Alabama was one of the most racially charged cities. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act had just been enacted, but the governor and many people at the time were not interested in any sort of integration. The governor said segregation now, tomorrow, and forever. Governor Wallace was not interested in the law. He literally stood in front of the university at Tuscaloosa and blockaded any black student from coming in. Thankfully, university officials stepped in. And while the university was moving slowly toward integration, that winning football program remained all white. There was a journalist in the LA Times that didn't think the University of Alabama should be recognized or given rewards with its all-white team. And it called into question Bear Bryant's coaching. Because Alabama is such a powerhouse football, they were like, why is he not speaking up against the segregation? In terms of powerful men, he was up there with the governor. But to his credit, he was talking to other coaches and he did want to recruit black players. He told one of the coaches who had a black football player, I want him so bad, I don't know what to do. They won't let me get him. But he said, one day I'm going to get them. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, USC was fully integrated. And guess what that meant? Many of the most talented African-American players were going to USC. Fast forward to September 12th, 1970. It's really interesting to hear the African-American players talk about their experience, the ones that were not from the South, going into the Deep South. They said when they walked off the plane, there were no black faces in sight. The black players that came from the South tried to educate them on just how bad the racial climate was in the Deep South. I should mention that Bear Bryant offered USC $150,000 to come to the Deep South, so he knew what he was doing. And John McKay said, yes, if you guys come to LA the following year. And oh, what a game this was. The players described the stands of just out into a sea of white faces. They said you didn't see any black fans in the stadium, but you did see them on the rooftops and you heard them on the outside. Many believe, myself included, this was the game that led to desegregation in all of football. USC brought a fully integrated roster with an entirely black backfield, including the quarterback Jimmy Jones, tailback Clarence Davis, and Sam Cunningham, who was the star. This was Sam's first game, and oh my God, was it a memorable one. There's a documentary on Showtime that has the players talking about the game, which is where I'm getting this information. Some of the white players from that Alabama team said they could not believe the size and the speed of these players. They were described as monstrous. One of the USC coaches said, I don't recall a meaningful first down in the first half. They were physically superior. And the players on the USC team were like, this is easier than we thought it was going to be. It was a beatdown. They didn't have a linebacker who could tackle, and they said they'd never seen anything like it. The other thing was John McKay was using an I formation. At the time, this was not being used as a strategy, so they weren't prepared for it. You've got an offensive strategy that they're not prepared for. You've got a physicality that they're not prepared for. Fans started booing, and then it was crickets. No roll tide, just vendors. Do you want a Coke? Do you want some popcorn? The assistant coaches for USC were like, let's keep piling on. John McKay was like, no, we're subbing people in the third quarter. Ultimately, it was 42-21, and that earned the respect of the players, the coaches, and the Deep South. And oh, the recruitment of African-American players.
35 punishing yards, 2 touchdowns, all in just 12 carries. Getting whipped physically didn't happen to Alabama football teams. It happened to that one on September 12, 1970.
We got to talk about this guy. This is Sam Cunningham, and I don't think I told you he was the running back that had like this exceptional, groundbreaking day. And he challenged racial stereotypes about African-American players. And he believed he has paved the way for greater opportunities and representation in the sport. His nickname is Bam, and he played for 10 seasons for the New England Patriots. It was Sam's performance that reportedly a factor in University of Alabama and its fans to be okay with recruiting black players. Now, they don't say that. They say it's all about the integration, but we know what they're talking about. I don't think we can underscore the significance of this from a racial standpoint.
This was Alabama in the 1960s.
Require Bear Bryant to recruit black football players. Once that game was over, Bear Bryant got religion, and he started recruiting black players